Candace, your first time on the show, right?
Absolutely.
All right. I don't know if you're a liberal or conservative, but you hear about the IRS targeting Tea Party groups, conservatives, now friends of Abe. There seems to be a pattern emerging.
Well, actually, I don't think there's really anything new, because when you're a person that's conservative or have any kind of moral base, what's going to happen is that simply you're not going to be accepted. So it really doesn't matter whether or not you're Republican, Independent, or Democrat. What matters is that you do the right thing. And what's happening is it's like the slippery slope. We're starting to do things that are not right, that are not acceptable, and we're targeting those people that choose to continue to have a moral base.
David,
we're seeing more examples of the government overreach, government power, or at least the attempt at it, into our private everyday lives. Now, Senator Ed Markey of Massachusetts, Democratic senator, has introduced something called the Hate Crime Reporting Act. It all sounds nice and good on the surface, but what he wants to do is give the federal government the power to scour the internet, television, and radio to look for examples of hate speech. It also smacks of clamping down on freedom of speech to me. The bill would commission a study to define what hate speech is and recommend how to stop it. The whole thing troubles me. I mean, no one favors hate speech. I don't know of any hate speech even happening on TV. Let's go to Candace, get your take on this.
Well, I first believe that it's our God-given right to be able to say whatever it is we want to say. Obviously, I'm not in agreement of saying something that's, full of hate or abominable, but I do believe that every human being has a right to an opinion, has a right to say what they want to say.
Are you troubled that the government's trying to get into this?
Absolutely, because what they're saying is we're going to show you how to speak and what to say, and they're going to dictate what we should say. Who has the right to do that?
Jan Ronas, I don't care if it's a Democrat introducing, as it is in this case, or a Republican. I don't care if it's a Democrat in the White House or a Republican in the White House. This should trouble all Americans.
Well, I think it's important to note, Rick, first of all, this was only 2 members of 535 members of Congress have been introduced a bill. It's probably not going anywhere. It's very similar to Tipper Gore's efforts many years ago to label or to have a kind of a PG rating on lyrics, sexual innuendo, violence, things of that nature in the recording industry. So, look, it's a democracy will work. I think it probably won't get out of committee, and it'll be... So
if I hear you right, you don't agree with this?
Well, I don't agree with anything that really impinges on free speech, at least in terms of the government's effort to control what we say.
Ritu Basu from the Ayn Rand Institute, what would Ayn Rand say about this?
Well, most people, the majority of Americans are not for hate speech. They do not support hate speech. It does not resonate with them. And so the solution to bad speech...
Welcome back, everybody. Now it's time for our Grassroots Citizens panel. But before we turn to our panel, I want to remind everyone about our call to action in the support of the Jamil Shaw Jr. Memorial Act. We've been following the story of Jamil Shaw Jr. closely on our show. He was gunned down by an illegal alien who had just been released from prison the day before. This act would force law enforcement agencies to share the history and immigration status of criminals, preventing a repeat of what happened to Jamil Shaw Jr. The phone number to Congress is listed on your screen. Now it's time for our Grassroots Citizens panel. Let's meet our panel members. Joining me in studio is author, commentator, Candace Chambers-Belida. Candace, good to see you.
Good to be here.
Also in studio is grassroots activist, perfect for the panel, Tanya Schultz. How you doing, Tanya?
I'm doing well, thank you.
And returning from a previous appearance on the show is celebrity whistleblower attorney Michael Wilson. Michael, glad to have you with us.
Yep, thanks for having me back.
And joining us from Tallahassee, Florida is the managing editor of the Daily Surge. Check that out, folks. If you've not gone to dailysurge.com, do so. Jerome Hudson. Jerome, great to have you with us, saluting us, huh?
Good to see you, Rick. Yes, always.
All right. Of course, the big breaking story today is that the basic framework for an agreement, it's being reported, has been agreed to for an Iranian nuclear deal between, obviously, the United States and Iran. Let's go to Jerome Hudson in Tallahassee. Jerome, is this good news or bad news for America?
Anytime Barack Obama is trying to make a deal on behalf of America, it's probably fair to assume that it's going to be a bad deal. I think I believe Richard Engel, a reporter at NBC, who's very honest about the Obama administration's foreign policy. He says that Arab nations and Israel are coming out publicly against this deal. I think that those are honest people. It's the Arab nation. I mean, these are people who share the region with Iran. This is Saudi Arabia. This is Egypt. So no, I don't think it's even fair to call it a negotiation, because it sounds like Iran is getting everything they want.
Let's go to Candace. Jerome is exactly right. Arab nations are coming out on the side of with Israel, condemning this. It's probably going to begin, if it already hasn't done so, a nuclear arms race in the Middle East led by Saudi Arabia. That's my take. Good deal, bad deal.
It's a bad deal. It's pure insanity. I mean, the realistic thing that I think about this whole thing is that there's no way that you can negotiate with people that want to destroy you. There's no way that you could believe them, that you could trust them, when they only have one thing in mind, is to not only wipe out Israel, but they have a hatred for America. And so I think that everything should be off the table, and that this is not a deal, it's not negotiable, and no way at all.
Michael Wilson, President Obama says President Obama says that we have an opportunity to bend the arc of history, and it's being reported that those around him closely say that President Obama believes that if we reach out to an historic enemy and treat them with respect and dignity and trust, that enemy will then in turn show us that respect, dignity, and trust in return. Right. Is he right?
Well, I don't know about that statement. I don't really agree with that.
That is the logic behind this. That's the logic behind this.
I don't really agree with that. But however, Mr. Hudson, what I do see regarding this deal is that, eventually Iran was going to acquire the nuclear bomb. So this kind of delays. It does put a certain amount, it reduces their centrifuges, and it does enable the U.S. to have some type of insight into the program. Now, I do want to say this, because it's just not Iran versus the U.S., and it's just not like Iran's all of the Arab world. I mean, there's a lot of sectarianism. There's a lot of geopolitics. As you know, Saudi Arabia is an adversary of Iran.
Yeah, we just said that.
I know. So I mean, when you talk about nuclear arms race, hopefully there will be a balance, because eventually all of these other countries are going to start acquiring arms.
Oh.
It's just that, I mean,
wait, that's all I hear is hopefully. Yeah. And maybe we could see things. What was an option? Give me an option, because no one's ever given an option.
I'll give it to you right now. Why did we lift the sanctions? The sanctions were hurting Iran. That's why they came to the negotiation table. Keep the sanctions on. Yes. Instead, we lift the sanctions, improve their economy, allow them to finance terrorism abroad.
Well, I don't think the sanctions were working, but I think at a certain point the sanctions create animosity.
In
the long run. Well, it's the long run.
They shouldn't have any responsibility for their actions in the first place.
Tanya Schultz, do you believe that Netanyahu and Saudi Arabia will take matters in their own hand?
I pray it doesn't come to such an escalation of something like that. But yeah, I think Netanyahu is going to step up to the plate when he has to.
Candace, you believe so?
Absolutely, and he should. He definitely should. But the bottom line is this is like an apocalyptic type of thing. This is catastrophic. And America needs to wake up and realize that this is not anything that's going to benefit America.
Look, there have been economic sanctions against North Korea. North Korea has acquired nuclear weapons. They are a threat more than Iran is right now. And look at North Korea. I mean, they're shooting.
Imploding. Where people are starving.
But they have a nuclear arsenal.
All right, let's go to Jerome. Jerome wants to respond to that. Go ahead, Jerome Hudson.
North Korea isn't a threat to anything. If you look at North Korea on a map, they're leading the way in the Earth Hour, because nobody has power except for the psychomaniacs running that country. Iran is funding terrorism in 5 regions of the world. North Korea can't even feed its own people. You talked about bending the arc of history. The only thing bending is John Kerry and Barack Obama's backs.
I disagree with you, Jerome.
When we come back, we'll continue with more from our Grassroots Citizens panel. My question is this. Let's start with Candace. Do you believe that what we're now seeing is the left trying to figure out how to dump Hillary as their lead candidate? Or Is this, as some are suggesting, that there's a bigger game plan in place, so that the left a year from now can say, wait a minute, we vetted this story. There's no there. It's time to move on.
I think that it's a strategy in place because everything that they do is well, calculated. But the issue is the fact that this is not going to go away. When it comes down to everything with Hillary, the Clintons, and all of this, every day there's a new story. There's a new breakthrough. Yeah. There's a new drama. There's a new problem. And I think the American people are getting a little bit tired of all of these things, that are happening. And so I think what the press is trying to do, yes, they're trying to help her and they're putting a Band-Aid on it. But this time I don't think it's going to work. I think that it's showing that she wasn't quite honest.
Okay. Let's go to Stephen Crowder. Let's go to Stephen Crowder. I'm going to say in what city, but that city's undisclosed for security purposes. Stephen, there is no grassroots enthusiasm for Hillary. We could see that by looking at the results of her book tour, which were dismal. But do you believe this is the left trying to get rid of her, or is this the left trying to protect her?
The thing is, the left doesn't need grassroots. They don't need grassroots fans because they control the delivery mechanism. So that's what's interesting about this. The delivery mechanism, meaning news and media like the New York Times and more liberal sources, are still it seems like they're trying to distance themselves from her a little bit, but you can bet that if there isn't a stronger candidate, in this case, it looks like that may be the case because you're talking about Joe freaking Biden. They will back her, and they will make sure that these things will be swept under the rug. And listen, I'm glad that people are finally starting to realize how dishonest the Clintons are. But if we're being honest, okay, if you talk about the entire media and the entertainment industry, if Hillary Clinton runs, they will undergird her. And if it's Clinton versus Bush again, as was maybe suggested after CPAC, conservatives lose. So let's not get too excited.
Stephen, can I just add one thing here, Stephen? Everyone has known the Clintons are dishonest. I mean, let's look at Clinton, and the Monica Lewinsky story. So I don't think that's the issue.
And that comes, you're saying that, Michael Wilson, as a supporter of the Democrat Party.
Yes, I am, yes. I think it's time, I think for 2016, I would, and I said this before on the show, to see another candidate to become a front runner.
Who?
But when you're the senator of the United States, when you're an elected official, a public official, you should not be accepting gifts. You should not be accepting lavish meals, airplane rides,
I agree with that, but there's a lot. But it sure seems funny to me, Candace, that almost a week after he comes out, he being Menendez, and criticizes in harsh terms the administration over its Iran policy, they bring charges against him. And Lois Lerner, there's all sorts of evidence that she's targeting this group and that group that has political affiliations, and they're protecting her.
I think it's sophisticated trickery. I mean, simply put, because what's happening is everybody knows what Lois Lerner has done, okay? So she gets away with it. I mean, any normal person that would do anything corrupted with the IRS, they're going to be guilty, okay?
But they're two different issues. They're still investigating the email scandal, and this is just a contempt issue because she pled the Fifth Amendment. They're two different issues.
Why did the emails even remotely disappear, number one, when there's a backup for a backup?
But that's a different issue. They are still investigating that issue.
Well,
this
why
contempt issue is just because she said I'm
the same issue.
Because the way it works, I mean, you have to flesh out the details. Fraud, again, is like an onion. You peel out the
like something's been
Listen, I've had cases.
That's excuse after excuse.
It's not excuse after excuse.
Yes, yeah, it's excuse.
We'll keep an eye on both those
lasts
stories.
5-6 years sometimes.
Switching gears now. Ever since the Ferguson case and ever since the case in New York, in Brooklyn, America's police have come under a lot of pressure across the mainstream media and from society. Some are saying the workplace stress is getting out of control for our police officers. Let's take a look at this video of a recent incident in New York.
Okay. Stop it with your, for what, sir? For what, sir? Okay. Stop it with that and realize the 3 vehicle and traffic law violations you committed. Okay. Okay? Do you understand me? Yes, I don't know what planet you think you're on right now.
I'm not planning, sir. I'm here.
Planning? I said planet.
I said I'm not.
Planet.
I'm not any planet.
How long have you been in this country?
Almost 2 years.
Almost how long?
2 years.
2 years. The only reason you're not in handcuffs going to jail and getting summonses in the precinct is because I have things to do.
Okay.
That's the only reason that's not happening. Because this isn't important enough for me.
All right, you heard that tirade and saw that tirade by an NYPD officer. He's been reassigned after a cab passenger taped that video with that tirade against the Uber driver. We'll go to Tanya Schultz here. To me, it's an example of the workplace stress that's placed. That's unacceptable, no question about it. And kudos to the cab driver for maintaining his cool, but that's unacceptable. But it's an example of the workplace stress that our officers are now under.
As a volunteer with the Citizens Police Academy up in Northern California for years, and doing all the training within those classes, people attend 16 to 18 classes, and you get to go through range. And you get to go through just live and just simulations of stuff. And just going through that in practice, it was stressful for me and all the class people that went through it. To actually go through real life, one-on-one, and having to make decisions, including what's happening to the police across our nation with the disrespect, the protesting, and the president not even backing them up.
By the way, just a quick program about tomorrow night's show. Former NYPD Police Chief Bernard Carrick joins us Friday night. Just want to get that out there. Candace, typical of what our police officers, the way they behave, or an example of workplace stress?
I would say that it's workplace stress, but now I love the personality of the New Yorker. They're fiery, they've got great passion. But the thing about it is there's another side. Sometimes people get a little drunk with power, okay? And you have to take that into consideration. There's a level of stress, but there's also those that, they wear that badge and they want to, push it out there. So it depends. It depends. Each situation is different.
Very individual.
Let's go to Jerome Hudson. Jerome, this officer's been reassigned. Do you think he should have been put on a bench for a couple of weeks through an investigation, or was reassignment the proper method?
No, I think they should bench him. The reports that I've read, according to the New York Times anyway, he's had similar complaints of this type of behavior going back to 2001. I think what happened with the Eric Garner case is that officer that put Eric Garner in the chokehold actually had previous complaints filed against him for similar violent behavior. And so I think if people see that or feel the appearance that the police, the law enforcement department is actually protecting bad actors and not really punishing them when they should be, I don't think that sends a good message. But yeah, I think the guy should be sat down for a couple of weeks, actually investigated. There is a problem. He doesn't need to be on the street. Put him behind a desk.
Yeah.
I was going to say, Jerome, you make some great points right there. I would also say that, it's New York's stressful. If you've ever been there, with cab drivers anyway. But one thing I think we can learn from this, which I think is very important, especially for young people out there in terms of Michael Browns and stuff like that, is, hey, that cab driver, he actually was really smart because he kept his calm.
Good point.
He didn't provoke the police officer, and he knew his passengers, the guys in the back, had a camera. So he, he lived to have another day. I mean, seriously.
It's a great point. And it's the point that the media overlooked in the cases in Ferguson and in case of Eric Garner. All right. We'll continue with more with our Grassroots Citizen panel after the break. And the final terrifying moments of the Germanwings flight that crashed was caught on cell phone video. Take a look at this. Stay with me. From the Edge of America, I'm Rick Amato. We're back after this.
We stand united.
With what Gabe said, we need to look at the root cause of why they exist. This president and Eric Holder pretended to be those types of leaders, and it was all just pretend.
Well, I think, obviously what happened was a major tragedy. My condolences to the family and everything. But the issue here is when we have these types of crises, when these types of events happen, the minorities need to come together in unity, in peace. Because what happens is when they go out and they start to riot or they start to do particular events that cause destruction or whatever, even though their voice is definitely being heard, and we hear you, but the issue issue is that it's undermining the true cause of unity, of peace, of being able to say, look, there's an injustice here, and we need to do something about it.
Is it unfair for someone to say that the rioting that we see, the minorities in outside of St. Louis, is a rush to judgment?
Well, in a sense, it is a rush to judgment. I mean, you have to be fair. Justice is justice. It doesn't know color. And so you have to be able to allow the system to work and find out what all the information is. Now, obviously, there were eyewitnesses of what took place and everything. But the point is, let's do it orderly, because that voice is a lot louder than when you do things in an irrational manner, when you do things in a violent manner, because then nobody listens, you see.
And in addition, it's the black neighborhood that's getting hurt.
Absolutely. I mean, why would you destroy your own neighborhood? I mean, you know, it takes time to build those things up, and so that's ridiculous.
Jordan. All right, welcome back, everybody. We are in our Grassroots Citizens panel. And next topic, a former district attorney by the name of Brian Holmgren has been fired after he recommended the sentencing of a woman with a history of mental illness, a 20-year history of mental illness. He recommended that the woman be sterilized, gave her a choice, sterilization or go to jail. This after she neglected her 5-day-old baby, and a baby mysteriously died. Let's go to Tanya Schultz. Sterilization of the mentally ill. Good idea, bad idea?
I don't think it's our business. I don't think we should step into those people's personal lives. But also, I do know, and we all have seen stories on how mentally handicapped people have been taken advantage of. The ones that can't help themselves, there's rape out there and stuff. So if I was a parent of a mentally handicapped person, I'd be scared to death for my child. To sterilize them, no.
In this case, let's go to Michael. In this case, they gave the woman the choice of going to jail or being sterilized. Is that a bad thing?
To cut a plea deal like that, I would say that it's a bad thing. But, you know, I think what happens, though, if you're talking about prosecutors share best practices around the country, California has a history, America has a history, but California has a history of sterilization of women in the prisons.
Really?
To give them an option. And the issue with this is sterilization in America is, in 1927, there's a big court case, Buck versus Bell, Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court judge basically decided that we don't need a third generation of imbeciles. So the female, they decided the female was not subjected to cruel and unusual punishment under the 14th.
So you're saying today in California, women prisoners are subject to sterilization?
Some of them are, yeah. They can actually offer as a plea deal to sterilize for sterilization. Yes.
Candace,
I think that's absurd. I mean, first off, who makes you God? Who makes you God to make that decision to take away someone else's right? What should have been done for this woman would have been giving her the perfect medical care, treatment that she needed, so that she would be able to function in the proper way, instead of taking herself away from her. But, you know, I mean, who gives you the right to do that? You see, because the bottom line with her was that even though she had done these things, and of course the baby dying and all, they needed to evaluate why all of these things were occurring.
And if she had 20 years of mentally handicapped, why did they leave the child with her if there was some sort of danger?
let's go to Jerome. Jerome, this all sounds very Adolf Hitler-esque to me.
No, you asked the question, is it a good thing or a bad thing? It just depends on who you're asking. If you're an abortion-loving, baby-killing liberal, then this is a good thing. I mean, it was Margaret Sanger in the pro-abortion in the 1920s and 1930s who actually used those. I mean, they're legal terms, I guess, now because of case law, but imbecile and I mean, this was used in Pennsylvania and North Carolina. They wanted to sterilize blacks. They didn't think that black people were able to live in society and be free. This is a miscarriage of justice. I can't. You're going to give somebody the choice of never being able to actually reproduce or spending the rest of their life or a long period of time in prison. I can't even believe that this man had his job for as long as he did. Yeah, and Jerome, you know what? There's a dark history about this in America, I say, because it's just not blacks, it's just not mentally handicapped. You know, it's women, Native Americans. I think 3,000 of them have been sterilized at a certain point. And I mean, if you go back in terms of how do you treat mentally handicapped, don't forget Joseph Kennedy.
they actually put her daughter, they gave their daughter a lobotomy, and she was kept in a mental institution. Yeah.
All right. Switching gears now. Now, Michael Wilson, your mother's from Steubenville, Ohio, right?
Yes, yes.
Well, Steubenville, Ohio is a stone's throw away from West Virginia. Steubenville, Ohio, the birthplace of Dean Martin and Jimmy the Greek. Stone's throw away from West Virginia. West Virginia has the highest mood-altering drug use in America.
Right.
Alaska has the lowest mood-altering drug use. West Virginia also has very harsh drug laws. Now, I've been to Morgantown. I think everyone there is on drugs. That was a joke. What are we to take from this, Candace, that in West Virginia, the Mountaineer people have greatest use of mood-altering drugs while having the harshest drug laws?
First off, I think we're playing Russian roulette in allowing these drugs to be legal. And I mean, they've altered their synthetic drugs now.
Oh, yeah,
I mean, you don't even know what you're getting.
Yeah.
And so this is ludicrous, I mean, realistically. And it should be, again, this is another thing that's going on that we need to say, no. That's it.
Just my mood altering, it kind of cracks me up. It's just funny because when I think of somebody's going to have more drug issues, it'd be Alaska, where it's darker, longer periods of time. So I think there'd be more of a problem there. I was actually surprised.
Well, you've been to West Virginia then. Jerome Hudson, why does the Mountaineer State? I mean, there was a song, Almost Heaven, West Virginia. Why do you suppose these folks are hooked on mood-altering drugs?
I don't know. Maybe it has something to do with proximity. I guess West Virginia is closer to Washington, D.C., and we know it's a crazy place to make anybody do a lot of drugs. I don't know. I really just don't know. And Alaska is very far away, so maybe my theory works. I don't know.
I think it actually has something to do. They said there's a high amount of smokers in West Virginia.
Smokers?
And so that decreases their lifestyle, and so then they seek out the mood-altering drugs. And Rick, just because my mom's from Steubenville doesn't mean that's why I'm a liberal and I sit over here, okay?
Well, I happen to like Steubenville. What other states would you expect? I mean, West Virginia surprised me. I would expect California. Yeah.
And
Washington State probably too. You know.
Southern states make up 6 of the top 10 drug use states in America. Surprising? You're there in Florida, Jerome. Does that surprise you?
No. Have you guys heard about what's going on in Panama City during spring break? I mean, have you ever been to South Beach in Miami? It's not surprising at all. No, I'm from Savannah, Georgia. One of the things, D.C., they passed the ordinance, so people were just getting free marijuana seeds in D.C. over the past week. There are a lot of elderly people who actually take marijuana, which was also included in the poll, and so I think you should. I mean, there are a lot of elderly people in Florida, and there are a lot of elderly people in Savannah, where I'm from, so I think that should be accounted.
What surprised me is that, according to this report, almost 20% of America's population take mood-altering drugs. There was insane. There was no indication of whether or not that number's gone up under Barack Obama, but I'm sure.